Hey, metalheads. This is the RAz from Graveyard, and you're listening to Agoraphobic News.
Hey, Milos here. Welcome to another episode of Agoraphobic News, this time with RAz of Graveyard. Hello, sir. How are you?
How's it going, man?
How do you cope with the virus?
Virus. The virus is the virus, man. There's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. So we're just living. And actually, as you know, with our new album, The Sixth Extinction, this is basically the beginning of what is more to come.
Can you explain the whole concept behind the Sixth Extinction? Because, it's basically a downfall on humanity on so many levels.
The Sixth Extinction was released the 13th of March of this year, 2020. The idea came actually after we had released our last EP, which was Opus V, and Custodian Killer had said, I want to talk about extinction. And if you listen to Opus V, we have a song called Ecological Collapse, where we just start the beginnings of this idea of the Sixth Extinction. And basically what we're talking about is the end of the anthropomorphic age on this planet due to the result of human intervention with nature, pollution, etc., these kind of things. So we decided to just write an album which would show the progression from where we are right now up till the very end where there's no life left on the planet.
Yeah, that's sick story. And I think it goes in stages, as you put it on the album. So can you recall that?
Yeah, exactly. So we started the album strangely. You hear Custodian Killer, he plays with a harmonic piano kind of guitar mix. He does a lot of that stuff. He has a lot of equipment like that. And we start about the earth being what it is and the place for sustenance and life. And mankind goes into this earth and starts to utilize this earth. And then we talk about the obscenity of it all as man starts to become more and more powerful on the earth, using materials to his own gains and to consume and ravish the earth, which we see as being obscene, basically. Not giving back to nature, but taking from nature and not giving back at all. So we have a song called It Is All Obscene. We talk about money then, and then money is a virus, and how the fallacy of neoclassical economics and the system.
Yeah, neoliberal.
Yeah, and then we talked about USA is Dead, which is funny because I cut the video from the whole movie we made, and a lot of people came back to me and said USA was dead about 10 years ago. So what it is, and then we have after that we saw a cut called Denial, which is a video again that I cut out from the movie we had out, and that's basically all the people at the top of this whole system running the world are basically just saying, look, we're making money from this whole situation, so if we say yes, there's a problem with how we're living and how these things are going with the earth, then we're going to lose out on our money. And so they deny that situation. So they said, this whole thing about global warming and stuff, it's all made up. It's a lie. It's not real. It's not happening. It's just naturally happening. And then, of course, when you deny, then the reality happens. And we have a song called Panic and Terror. And you can see with this whole virus happening now, a lot of panic right now. And this is nothing. I mean, you figure out what's going to happen when food stops and shortages happen and stuff like that. So, and then we have after that was a song called Martial Laws Nationwide, which means the systems they put martial law into effect to keep everything under control. Then it's fun because what we liked about the album was that we went from the standard tuning and then we moved up to the lower. We tuned down the guitars to C. And we then go into the song, which is Sixth Extinction, which opens up the second half of the release. And it just talks about systems collapsing and climate changing. So after that song, The Climate Shift, which is about the change in climate and which makes life basically unbearable on Earth. Followed that up by Mole People, which is their last survivors on Earth. These are the people who were the really ultra rich that could afford making bunkers. Their life, of course, is nothing because there's nothing left on Earth. Earth to live on. So it's a pretty miserable existence. Followed up Hellstorms, which means the atmosphere is gone and basically the planet is being rained on by meteors and whatever. There's no atmosphere to burn everything up. And then, of course, Irreversible Annihilation. Everything's gone. Basically, the planet is gone thanks to human race. And Rapture Fire and the last extinction, which means there's no more life to be on this planet. So with that, it was the sixth extinction was the last extinction, and there's nothing left. So it's a very happy kind of music that we're writing here for Graveyard.
Yeah. And where did you get there is this term sixth extinction, and it's connected with this Anthropocene in a way, right?
I think there's a whole book and everything out about the sixth extinction and stuff. When they talk about this, the end of this age and stuff like that. So, we're saying it's happening right now because in reality, if you look at any of the science out there, they're talking about the amount of species that are becoming extinct because of man-made pollution and man-made growth on the planet. Right now, there's slowly starting to become places on this earth that are becoming uninhabitable because of the temperature changes and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that fucked up. You call your music political death noise. Can you explain, what is this all about?
Everybody makes their own kind of brand of metal, I would say. Graveyard's been around since 1991. And even back then, we used to call it political death noise because there's just a lot of noise, and especially nowadays in the world on TV and media devices and stuff like that, it's just noise. It's loud. And we want to make that music that we make really loud and overbearing, and a lot of people don't like it. That's good. And basically an undertone of a lot of political things to just show how corrupt these fuckers are and how all they think about is themselves, their advantage, and we conquer this country, we take resources from here, we subjugate these people, and this kind of inhumanity on the earth, which Graveyard is totally against. Graveyard saying, look, you fuckers, the day is going to come where you're going to come to the graveyard. You will be dust. There's nothing left for you. And don't you open your eyes and see that this is not worth it. What are you gaining from this whole thing anyway?
Yeah, so it's pretty optimistic. How did you form Graveyard? How did that happen?
Well, back in the late 80s and early 90s, actually, I was both at my university, and I had a radio station, a radio show called the Powersurge on WSB 90.1 in Stony Brook, New York, and it's in Eastern Long Island. And there I had a bunch of listeners, and one of those listeners was Custodian Killer, who used to call up and make these great requests. I was like, wow, this guy really knows his music. I appreciate this guy. We had a contest for my radio show, and that was to go to the Day of Death up in Buffalo, New York, the Sky Room up in New York. I think it was 1991 or something like that, to see autopsy, immolation, incantation. This harmonic orchestra played there. Rod of War played. There was a bunch of bands played, and so I had like a bunch of people come with me to that show, and Custodian Killer was one of them, and we just hung out and talked. We decided to start a band, and one night we sat down and we just started playing music. And after a lot of drugs and alcohol and stuff like that, we turned on the tape recorder we had on, and we listened to what we did that night, and we liked it. In that recording, we heard I was screaming out and saying, "This is Graveyard," and so. That was it. So he said our band was Graveyard. End of story.
Awesome. And your first demo was called Slabfest, right?
Exactly. Slabfest was our first work back in. We released it in 1992. And again, you can see when we talked about the collapse of humanity. There's a song called "Televised Human Development," which talks about television and how minds are being devised and eaten up and used, and people are being programmed by television. We had a song called "Adage in Democratic Justice," which talks about the injustices in the world and how if you have money, you're not held to account in the system as opposed to people who are poor and oppressed. And then I think we recorded a little piano piece called "Funeral Chapel" at the end. But yeah, what was cool about that album was we had a drummer, Dave Miranda, who was the drummer from Ludacris in a band called Six and Violence as well. So he was really great doing the drums for that album. And we put the Slabfest demo out. So that's what done in 1992.
Awesome, man. I really like that demo because, you know, it has this thrash metal vibe with death metal vocals, so it's like a perfect mix, you know.
We tried to be radical back then. I mean, back then, you know, there was a lot of thrash out there and stuff like that. Was still very, very clean. A lot of that music was still very clean. I mean, Exodus had that crazy vocal sound with Paul Bailoff going off. But really, the start of that really death, noisy sound really started coming out around that time, in the early 90s. We kind of like that kind of feeling as well in our music, so we try to make it like that.
And what were like your biggest influences, you know, as a guitarist and vocalist?
You know, I really liked at that time, and I still do, of course, Tommy T. Barron's guitarist, yeah. You know, Alan Holden he's a guitarist who runs that whole show, that kind of type of playing. My show, my radio show in New York was basically metal, but I had a lot of bands from Europe and around the world. I played American metal, but I did a lot of international music as well. That's why we had a kind of different sound, I think, as opposed to a lot of American sounding thrash metal like Testament or something like that, or Slayer.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely more dirty sounding metal. You know, I mean, I really like Bay Area, but it's way more polished sound.
Like I really like Possessed. At the time, Seven Churches was a big album for me as well.
Yeah.
Holy Terror was another band that I really appreciate, and Voivod, of course, which is like a wonderful band. And then from South America, I like Dorsal Atlantica, Sepultura, and Sarcophago. And I mean, Bulldozer was great back from Italy. I wasn't that big of a Venom fan, but I like the kind of noisy, kind of drunken attitude that they had. Artillery was a big band for me.
Artillery.
Yeah. And then I really liked Oz, too. Oz from Finland. I never knew they were from Finland until like years later. Just strange bands, different bands. I didn't like the mainstream stuff.
Yeah. Can you tell us something about this vacation dinner at the Morgue?
The next album after Slabfest, you know, Custodian Killer and I were just doing a lot of crazy stuff and just getting way fucked up and just going into the city and just do crazy stuff. And we were on a platform one day, 6 o'clock in the morning, coming back from the city. I don't know, we were hanging out there, and this homeless guy came up to us. And I guess he read Claude had an Autopsy t-shirt on, something like that. The guy said, "Vacation dinner at the Morgue." And it was like, what? You know, we didn't understand. It was just such a bizarre kind of thing the guy said. And it was just, that's we were working at the time we were working on an album as well. And it said, that's the name of the album. The guy said, "I came from a vacation dinner at the Morgue." That's what we understood because we were so fucked up and stuff. Actually, what the guy had said was, he said, "Oh, autopsy. That's funny because I just came back from an identification at the Morgue." But we understood it as vacation dinner at the Morgue, so that's why we stuck with that title. What was cool about that album was it was really pre-suicidal black metal, death metal kind of things. We had a song called "Destroy Yourself," "Immune to Burial," "Chewed Priest." Custodian Killer just really went off on the guitars on that album, and I really appreciate that album a lot. And it really has an atmospheric metal taste to it as well. I think well done. At that time, I'd gone overseas myself, so they had finished it, and then Custodian Killer basically laid out most of the vocals on that whole album, and it received a lot of good reviews from a lot of underground magazines at the time.
Yeah, and who did the artwork?
Oh yeah, that's all Custodian Killer's mind. I said, "Custodian Killer, man, you're the guy. You're gonna do it." Graveyard is. It's his. He does what he wants with Graveyard. So I just execute what he wants me to do, and we do it. And his whole idea was the logo is Custodian Killer. All the album covers are Custodian Killer, and yeah, it's a pretty bizarre thing with the aliens and the body.
Upside down crosses.
Upside down crosses. Yeah, it's heavy stuff. I appreciate it. It's very different.
When I saw it for the first time, I was like, man, this is great.
Custodian Killer, he can play every Jimmy Page song on guitar. On the top of that album, on the above the aliens, there's like the symbols from I think Led Zeppelin or something.
In circles.
Yeah. Like the Valentine. I think it's cool.
Your third demo was called Philosophies of Reality.
And Displaced Souls, yeah. That was, again, now, I mean, it just got darker because, I mean, when you're in a band like Graveyard, what can you write about? You can't write, metal. You got to talk about death and talk about the end and stuff like that. So, and this is a really crazy time in my life because I was living overseas in Europe and stuff like that. So we were basically apart from each other for quite some time. But I was writing some music as well, and he was writing, and I was lost and he was lost, and it was just. So we had that whole thing of Displaced Souls because I was basically roaming around Europe and just going around and just meeting different metal people and talking with people and hanging out and just living life and stuff like that. And Claude was doing his thing as well. He had bands and stuff like that at the time, doing Led Zeppelin cover band and Jimi Hendrix. He plays all that music to a T. And we wrote those albums. And I said, Claude, I'm gonna come back to the States. And when I come back to the States for about a week or something like that, let's record all this stuff and put out the album. So that's how we recorded Philosophies of the Reality and Displaced Souls. It was like I think an 8-cut demo. And it was very black metal influence. Like at that time, that's when Euronymous was killed, or that guy dead killed himself, and that Norwegian black metal scene was really getting big. We were really into Dark Throne at the time, and so we had that kind of really black metal kind of feel for that album.
Yeah, absolutely. What does this album title stand for? I mean, Philosophies of Reality and Displaced Soul.
I mean, what is the reality? You know what I'm saying? The reality is death. Graveyard is like the ultimate reality. It's the end. I mean, you can say death, okay? Death, like what Chuck was talking about. Death is like the end. That's like it. You can't go any farther than that. Of course, if you believe in an afterlife, then death is only just a transition point. But Graveyard for us is the end. So the reality, the philosophies, all these philosophies in our music here are based on basically the end, the graveyard, the final place. And Displaced Souls were just roaming the earth, and we were displaced. So that's how we just became that tied that all together as the title.
Were you born in the United States or not?
No, I was. Yeah, I was born in the United States. I was born in Butte, Montana. you know who's from Butte, Montana?
No, not really.
Evel Knievel. The guy who jumped the Grand Canyon with a motorcycle, a rocket ship.
I didn't hear about it.
Check it out, Evel Knievel. He was the first crazy stuntman who did like motorcycle jumps over cars, and he shot himself over the Grand Canyon and stuff. He's a very interesting person. I'm from Butte, Montana too as well. And then eventually we went back to New York and stuff. So I was basically lived in New York.
You mentioned it. I mean, after the vacation dinner at Morgue, you went to Europe, right?
Yeah, well, I was actually in Europe at the release of Vacation Dinner at the Morgue.
Where did you live at the time?
I lived in Istanbul, Turkey, which is an interesting place. It was a really nice place, actually. And I lived there for about 8 years in Turkey. And I was always in touch with Custodian Killer, of course. We did that Philosophies of Reality, and that was 1998. And after that, I left Turkey. I went to Romania. I lived in certain areas in Europe as well. And then I came back to America eventually, and we got together with Custodian Killer, and we did what came to be our first full-length album, which was Opus V. Then we released that in 2018.
Yeah, and what does this Opus 5 means?
It's actually Opus V. Claude says it's Opus V. Okay, it's Opus V. It's our fifth album actually, but it's Opus V, and Opus is what? It's an opera. It's like a great work. The Graveyard is really I think is a spur of the moment kind of. There's nothing really to think too much about something. Something comes and we say that's it. That's what it's going to be called, and that's what we said. So Opus V was the name of the album that we did 10 years after Philosophies of the Reality, Displaced Souls. So we said let's do it. And you know what spurred us actually was in December of that year, and Lemmy had just died, and when we heard Lemmy died. I said, Claude, just pick up the guitar, man. Let's jam out. Let's do this, and we did that. So that's what we started. We started recording music immediately for Opus V.
I mean, Lemmy was such a hero, man. He was like a big inspiration for me in many ways, and I saw like He was at Exit Festival in 2015, and he was literally a dead man on stage. He was sick, really, really sick at the time.
Wow.
But he's the hero because he finished the tour in the last show in Germany in December, and like I said, he was already a dead man, but he kept going.
Yeah, that's amazing that he played up to that end. And the funny thing is, everybody says, okay, Lemmy from Motorhead and stuff like, but the guy was playing, jamming, and playing concerts in the '60s and stuff like that. So I mean,
yeah.
you think about that's quite an achievement. And that's quite a length of time that he did. Lots of different types of music he played. And Custodian Killer has videos and some of his old stuff with some of the bands he played in, and he has records from that stuff too as well. And yeah, he told me a lot about Lemmy before Motorhead even did anything like Motorhead, and it's a very interesting history that guy has.
Yeah, I mean, he had like this before Hawkwind. He had some band and he played guitar in it. And I didn't even know that he played guitar, before Hawkwind. So that's really, psychedelic phase of Lemmy's career, which is fucking great, And this Opus V, it's more poetic than, let's say, the latest album, right? I would call it like a political pamphlet of some sort, because of the lyrics.
Yeah, I think at that time too, it was when Trump was going around. And Graveyard always being into that kind of political arena. We just talked about the wrongness of the corporations running the United States and having their influence over any kind of political decisions, and how money really works its way into politics. So we basically talked about that in Opus V, and also put a parallelism to the rise of Hitler and how things went down in Germany as well, and tied it into Opus V.
Yeah, and it's funny how how your economic career is kind of connected with these lyrics.
Yeah,
I mean, literally, when you read it, you see that it's not like some ordinary American guy.
Yeah, so I mean, we talk ecological collapse and the military-industrial complex, building weapons, killing people around the world, and just making profit from that. The incorrectness of that whole situation. And I think at the time too, the serious situation was going on with people being killed with chemicals and stuff like that. So don't interfere. Don't get in the way of this whole corporate thing. We're going to do what we want to do, and that's that. You just work and fuel the system, and that's all you're going to do. The underlying theme of Opus 5 was just this juggernaut, this machine, just taking over the planet and doing what it wants to, without any regard for nature or the future.
Yeah. And this song, "Slaughtered by Chemicals," was it inspired by some event?
It was like that. Claude was just loaded because he just "Slaughtered by Chemicals." That's the name of the song, Claude. That's the name of the song. I mean, you could see that the lyrics, starvation, exploit workers, defraud masses, corporations produce weapons, spawning terror, pure malfeasance, controlled media, selling chaos, marketing lies, Ural puppets, Ural slaves, amassing wealth of billions, endless suffering continues, pass over thy people. Ye shall find their children slaughtered by chemicals. It really has this nice carcass sound to it.
Yeah, I really like that album. But when you compare like Opus 5 with the latest album, what is like the main difference?
Now, I think you can say, okay, Opus V was definitely more melodic. What is Graveyard? Because Graveyard, we cover A to Z. I mean, we're not thrash metal, we're not death metal. I mean, we everything is involved: rock, hard rock, classical. I mean, we throw it all together. We make Graveyard as the band itself. So when we did Sixth Extinction, we said, look, we're talking now about Extinction. That is okay. We'll talk about the grave, and the grave is the end. But okay, after what is even worse than the grave would be the extinction of the whole entire planet. And okay, so how do you put that to a sound? We said, okay, so it's got to go from bad to worse, to really to extinction. So we got to also make that sound that way as well, to get worse. So that's why we down tune the guitars. The sound gets heavier and darker and stuff. So that's what we did basically with that album. And we can't really have kind of light, kind of melodic stuff there because it's the end of the planet. So it's got to have that end of planetary sound. So we try to achieve that with Sixth Extinction, with that kind of idea going into the music.
Yeah, I mean, I really like how you put it, into a single album. And who came up with the idea for the movie?
And then the idea with the movie is we have actually had an old drummer in our band, Lance, and he did some movies as well. So we were just listening to this music and watching Lance's movies, and we said, Lance, can we put this together into a movie? This is going to fit in perfectly with what we're doing right now. For me, I really enjoy watching that movie. It's from start to finish. It's 52 minutes, but it passes like because you get so enveloped by the movie, you get kind of lost in it. It's a very interesting way it's been done. And so we advise if you can listen to Sixth Extinction, you listen to it and watch the movie at the same time. And that idea was we just said, again, like I said, it's a spur of the moment thing. It was like, hey, why don't we just put this together and put it to a movie too as well? So that's that, and everything matched up so nicely. So that's how we did that.
Yeah, and how much time you needed in order to direct this movie?
I don't know how long Lance took to make that movie, but he did it. He dropped it to us, and then he disappeared, and he went to India. and he's somewhere in India right now. We don't know where he is because they I don't know if they opened up now or not, but with this virus thing, they closed everything down in India, so he couldn't get out of India apparently. And so that's the last we spoke with him was when he was before he went to India, and he kind of dropped out of touch now. So if he comes back, we'll see him and talk to him and get some more information from him.
I hope he's not beaten by the sticks, bamboo sticks.
No, he's a pretty deep kind of guy. He's like very with nature as well and stuff like that. So
yeah.
He went to somewhere in the Himalayas or something like that. So he disappears.
And he's on a spiritual journey, maybe.
Yeah, that's what that's about. So definitely something like that.
I mean, you told me that you were living in Romania. So can you recall that?
What happened was I was working in Turkey, and I said I had left the business world, and I started going back into music. And then I had one last hook thrown out to me from Romania. They said, "Hey, we need this kind of guy like you to do some business in Romania." And I said, I took the offer, and I worked there for 2 years. In the meantime, I also did some music on the side as well. But once that was over, I was like, that's it for me. I'm not going to do this business anymore because it's not correct. It's not the way business the world should be. And so, I left. But Romania was an interesting time because that was at that time of Romania, right after Ceausescu had fallen. The country was just getting together. The basic structures were being set up in Romania, and metal was there. There was metal there. What I really like about my journey throughout Europe and throughout the world was basically when I go out, I meet people. I met people that enjoyed this kind of music, and I found that in the world, it doesn't matter who they are, what religion they are, what color they are, whatever. If they like metal, you're always coming to that Slayer part. So they have that same feeling when that part comes. They're like that comes out. That they know that music and they feel that music, feel it just like you feel it. So it's interesting. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I was at this party with around 10 or 50 metalheads, and the funny thing is that nobody listened to the same, genres of metal. We were, all over the place, but still we were connected by metal. So
Right,
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, without doubt. And it's very interesting because no matter where you go in the world, there's this metal scene somewhere, and if you can find those people and hang out with them, they're just cool, down to earth people usually, and you can really have a good time with them.
And I mean, how exciting was Romania for you? Because that was like a big change. I mean, definitely coming from New York to Romania. Crazy shift,
No, it's a drop. It's definitely a drop. I mean, I don't really care, but like I said, it was the necessities of life, whatever they say, that's the standards have fallen in a big way, but it doesn't matter for me. But I really enjoyed Romania. I think it was a very, very beautiful experience. I had a very good time in Romania, and I met a lot of bands and stuff like that. There were bands that wanted to be back then. Okay, I met Negativa, which was like they were like a demo band by that time, and I was listening to, and they played like in this little bar, and I saw them, and I was like, wow, these guys are something else. I said, these guys are gonna be good, and they turned out to be really good, big band in the black metal scene.
Yeah, and what was like this Romanian metal scene like?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same like any kind of metal scene. I think there was one or two bars, and then they played metal music, and the metal music they played is never really my the type of metal music you want to hear. But then it's like listenable kind of music. Like when I was in Norway, like I went to that there was the bar. Excalibur or something like that. Like Fenris go to, and all the black metal people used to go to, and you think like. From a distance, you're saying, "Oh, that's got to be like the blackest metal bar ever," and playing the heaviest music and whatever. But you go there, and they're playing like all this kind of glam metal. It's like, what's going on? Why don't you play something heavy? And they're like, no, we can't play that. No one will stay around or listen to it. And in reality, I mean, the guy's just trying to sell alcohol, and people hang out and listen, talk, and drink and stuff like that. You can't sit there and play like Transylvanian Hunger in a bar. It's not going to happen and besides the fact, those metal kids, they have no money anyway, so they're not going to hang out and drink beer. They're just listening to music and stuff, and that's all it's gonna be. So it's not a way to conduct business. So they play like the kind of popular metal music and stuff like that, and a lot of people come from all over and stuff. And so Fenris doesn't care. He just hangs out and drinks.
Yeah. And did you jam with some bands in Romania?
I started a band. I tried to start a band called Black Church, and there was actually a church called Black Church in Romania, and I had this keyboardist Roxanne Constantine, and she was really amazing musician, and we were playing, and we had a drummer and stuff like that. We were playing some stuff, and we had like 5 or 6 songs ready to go and stuff like that, but it was just kind of hard to keep together and get a reliable place to jam, and then I was the end of my work contract as well, so everything kind of fell apart, and she picked up and went to Canada, and I went back to the United States.
Yeah, and she ended up in Vadis and Negativa, right?
Yeah, she's a fantastic musician. She's a wonderful person. I really, really had a great time working with her, and I don't think she's doing metal anymore. But she was really, really, really a talented person, and she had a lot to bring to the metal scene. And I know she did a lot of work in Canada, but I think she just said enough is enough, and so a lot. And you notice that too in the metal scene too. Some people just get fed up and say, I don't want to do it anymore. And that's it, and they go.
And she's Romanian, right?
Yeah, Roxanne is from Romania.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a sick story because she ended up playing with, Little May and Steve Hurdle. And the bad thing is that I think there's nothing recorded with her.
You're that kind of a talented musician. You have that kind of ability. I mean, you're going to do something with that music. And it was weird, is I think she just left music entirely. So that's really strange, but it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you tell me what is like being a metalhead in Turkey?
And Turkey is interesting too. I mean, when I was there first, because I first went to Turkey, visited Turkey back in like 1988 or something like that, and there was a small metal scene back then. A couple underground magazines were being written, but it was nothing really big. I think Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, they like the Man of War kind of bands. And then I came back to Turkey back in I think it was 1992, and the scene had grown much bigger. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the thing was, the issue was that bands couldn't really come to Turkey to play because the government probably wouldn't let them to come into the country or whatever. But as Turkey started to open up, more bands started to come and more concerts were shown. I think one of the better concerts I've ever seen in my entire life was once Saddam's supposed to come play in Turkey, and that's again, it's an example of problems because they came to Turkey, things they couldn't get the work permit to play, so they didn't play. But the band that did play for that show was Punch and Stench, and that show was so insane, it's so violent because these kids are so starved for metal, and I mean you put Punch and Stench on the stage too, and you can imagine what it was like. Total violence. It was. I mean, I must have dove off the stage about 15 times myself, and the police actually came into the concert and stopped the concert and pulled the plug, and it was just out of hand, and they cleared out the arena and everything. It was crazy, but yeah, it was definitely one of the better concerts I've been through in my life. But that was, like you can see, at Turkey at the time there was starvation to hear metal, and that kind of movement is happening around the world. A lot of these countries like in Indonesia and stuff like that, or even in Saudi Arabia, there's this undertone. In Iran, there's just kids are starving for metal, but the bands can't come and play. But they'll one day they'll come and they'll be able to play, and there'll be a big movement going on in that area of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks to be, a metalhead in, let's say, Iran because you're portrayed as an enemy of the state.
We stand against these kind of people who tell us what to do or tell us how it should be and whatever, because it's not how it should be. I bet a lot of Iranian metal kids, and I say, hey man, just keep listening, keep doing it. You want any information or anything like that? And like I said, I have a band in Turkey, so that's one of the places I want to play in Iran. And I said I'll play in Iran now, and like no, you can't play in Iran now. It's you can't do that. So I understand what they're saying, but in the future, I said when it does open up, we'll definitely go to Iran and play. Why not? I mean, they're people just like us. The government is a different situation, but the people of the people, and then metalheads are the metalheads, and they're going to be the same as us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you told me that you had this Powersurge FM radio station. So can you share some details about that?
Okay, yeah, and back in like 1987, I guess it was, when I was going to university, and actually when I started this whole metal thing when I was younger as a kid, I used to listen to the radio a lot, and there was a couple of stations in New York that used to play metal and stuff. And I know back in my high school, I used to play in a band. We used to play Black Sabbath covers and stuff like that. But I was always like wanted to scream and yell and shout and be angry and stuff like that. They're like, hey, they would go sing like Ozzy. I was like, okay. I wanted to be louder and noisier and stuff like that, but they didn't really. They want to stay along the lines of Black Sabbath, which was cool. But I liked heavier stuff, and I used to listen to these radio stations. And I remember when I was listening to one day, this one song came on, and it really moved me. And that song, and I think about it now, was Creeping Death by Metallica. When I heard that jigga 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 jigga, I was like, wow, that's something else. I said that's heavy stuff, and then that's what I really got into, that kind of thrash metal scene. And I went back. That had just came out actually. Ride Lighting had just came out at that time, and they were playing a lot on underground on the college radio stations. And I said, yeah, when I go to college, hopefully I'll be able to do that too, make my own show and stuff. So when I went to college, I stopped by the radio station, and I felt around, and they said, yeah, we're looking for musicians, people, DJs to do shows. And I got the impression that they didn't want heavy metal in their radio shows or on the radio station. I got that impression, so I said, okay, I'll do a reggae, and because I like A to Z music by itself, for me, and I had hang out with Rasta guys, and they said, hey man, help me out with this demo that I'm gonna make to get into the radio station, and they helped me out with the reggae program, and I did that and stuff, and they were really impressed with my work, and they said, yeah, definitely come and be a DJ for us and stuff like that. And then I said, okay, I'll start to be a DJ and work with you guys, and they put me at 3 o'clock in the morning and stuff, and I said, okay, but by the by, I'm not going to play reggae. And they said, oh really? I said, yeah, I'm going to play metal. And they said, no So I kind of snuck in there. I kind of snuck in there with metal, and then I played, and that show, which I called the Powersurge, I had a hostess too, Dawn Marie. She worked with me, and we did really nice show together. And we got that show from. It was like Wednesday night at 3:00 in the morning too, and then we finally got the peak hour. They gave us this 12:00 slot on Saturday night, and it got pretty big after a while, after like 4 years. And so we played a lot of the heavy metal at that, because it was death, speed, and thrash. And I said, no glam, nothing else. I just want the heaviest, harshest music there that we can get our hands on, and we're going to play it. And that's what we played. So, people enjoyed it, and we did what we wanted to do, not what people wanted to hear. We played what we wanted to play, and that was what we did, the Powersurge.
Yeah, and was it named after an Overkill song of the same name or not?
Yeah, I have the plug for the show, and I have the Powersurge going on with Bobby Bliss going power, here up, power. We used the word power surge because it represented what we were doing. It was a surging rush of power, like Judas Priest has that song "Riding on the Wind." He says surging rush of power. So it's like that one of the feeling in our band, in our show name. So that's what we call it, the Powersurge.
Yeah, I mean that song is like one of the best from the album. Yeah. I mean, these riffs and the way Blitz, sings, it's fucking amazing.
And that's pure raw energy, and it's what we like the music. We want that feeling, you have that crushing feeling in the music sound. So not everybody understands it. They don't. A lot of people don't. So, but that's their understanding of music is different than ours, and we just like really heavy, raw, strong force sound, and that's what we like it. So that's got to be that. That's how I like it, and that's how Custodian Killer as Graveyard, and we're not going to change it. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it's just noise," or it sounds like 15 different people playing different things at the same time. But no, it's not actually. And if you listen to the album, actually, if you really give it a good listen, you can hear that it's very intricate.
I mean, literally, I think like that. The latest album is a big move, from Opus 5, because the songs sound more mature even with better production, which is like a funny thing when it comes to Graveyard, because it's always raw. But the latest album was like improvement for the band.
Custodian Killer has all this vintage equipment from like the 60s and 70s, and of course the 80s. But it's like really raw power. The equipment that we have in Frozen Corpse Studios, these amp heads and this has got a lot of really interesting stuff. We're playing that through some really good equipment, and that stuff doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's really hard to find, and so we maintain that old style. We're not going to go in digital kind of thing. No, that's not Graveyard. That's not what we're about.
And which bands did you interview back in the day on your radio show?
Oh, back at actually my first interview before I did the radio show was with Possessed. I had met them. They had just released Beyond the Gates, and I had met them at a record store. They were doing a record signing or something like that. I'd met Possessed and talked with those guys, and I said, I really like this, and I want to do this. So that's one of the things that moved me to make a radio program. And then when I started the radio show, my first interview was with Chuck from Death. I had made the arrangement with Combat Records to visit Chuck backstage. I think it was right at the beginning of the Leprosy album came out, and I called him Evil Chuck. I said, "Hey, Evil Chuck, how you doing, man?" And he's like, "Hey, man." He's like, "Hey, I'm not evil, man. It's cool." He was the coolest guy. And I was like, "Oh man, come on, you're evil." And he said, "No, man, I'm not evil, man. It's okay." So he was a really cool guy. We talked a lot about what Death was and the sound. And actually, at that time, they didn't print the lyrics to Scream Bloody Gore, and he gave me the lyric by lyric of the different songs, and he mentioned that was really cool back then.
And what was he like? I mean,
he's a metal kid, man. He just hang out metal kid, and that is funny because I had met him. I guess that was like in '87 backstage. And then when I was in Europe, I went to the Dynamo Festival in Eindhoven back in 1998. I had backstage passes too. Then I said, Chuck, backstage Sundance, 1987. I did the first interview with you backstage, and he's like, Sundance. He's like, fuck, I remember that place. What the fuck are you doing here, man? So it was a cool flashback there. The contributions that guy has made to metal and what he's done for the underground metal scene was just enormous. It's sad the way he passed away and that how he had no money, and the United States healthcare system didn't really help him out because he didn't have enough money to pay for his treatments and stuff like that. I think that shit has to be called out, and people have to say, why the fuck is this going on like this? Because people say, oh, it's the greatest healthcare system in the world. And fuck you, man. Chuck Schuldiner's proof that it's not.
Because of it.
It has nothing to do with it. Socialized medicine is communist. This is fucking bullshit. And I pay taxes in this country, and my tax money should go to places to help people, not help corporations or weapons companies. And Chuck Schuldiner was about that. He was about anti-situations that are going on in the world today.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? Because in the United States, they portray this healthcare system as like communist, you can have like a government, nationalized healthcare. That's a communist thing. But the Britain, which is not a fucking communist country, and Canada have like free healthcare system. I guess it's not perfect, but it's at least it's free.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, too, then you have these people who will say, oh, we had to cut the taxes. Okay, you're cutting the taxes, but what are you going to get from that? I mean, people saying, oh, this is great, they're cutting my taxes. I have more money for myself. But okay, so what, you have money for yourself, but what are you going to do with your money for yourself? You have to pay for everything. So it's like, it's a catch-22. But unfortunately, people don't realize that, and they're not going to realize it until it's too late. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I don't know if you watched this interview with James Murphy, of Testament. And he said like that he spent $250,000 for medication and surgeries, which is like a Ferrari.
I mean, it's insane. It's wrong. It's really wrong. It's evil, is what I say. I mean, we talk about evil and Satanism and the upside down crosses and stuff like that, and that's all cute and stuff like that. How metal does this and stuff, but in reality, the fucking evil fucking people are the people there. They're just taking the money for themselves and being selfish and greedy and causing people to die because of their actions. And these are the evil people. But Graveyard wants to expose that. Graveyard is showing you who the fucking evil people are. What is true evil, as opposed to, I have an upside down cross on my wall and I spit pig blood. This, that, fuck you, man. It's just, get with it. I mean, that's like a game. And then people use that. It's funny because I speak to black metal kids. They're like, "Oh, did you see that new black metal movie with the about Euronymous or whatever that movie?" I don't even see the movie myself, actually. That movie just came out with about the church burning.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah, but the thing was, I said, does the movie have Dark Throne in it? They're like, who? I said, Dark Throne. If you talk about the Norwegian metal scene and you don't have Emperor or Dark Throne in that movie, then that movie has nothing to do with black metal. I'm sorry. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. And it was just for money purposes. Even though the movie's about mayhem, they don't have one mayhem song in the movie, I think.
I mean, I think that they didn't have the rights to do it because the band didn't want to get involved in it. And luckily they didn't. So, which is the ex-drummer of Bathory, this director of the movie. And but the thing is, Euronymous' death, it's portrayed like, as if it's like a comedy movie. And I don't know what to make out of it. I didn't watch the movie. I can't, I can't have a conclusion, but...
Right, and I can't either. But how can you have a movie about mayhem and about the Norwegian black metal scene and not have music from Mayhem or Dark Throne? That just shows you how artificial and how fake the media of the world is in a way. I mean, because in my business world, like they would say something about business and certain things about the way economic situations are happening, and I knew that was not the case, but it was advertised in the world that's how it's going, but it's not how it's going. And I think with the Mayhem movie, for money, it was a money grab. Like, I can make money off this story, then let's make the movie. We have nothing to do about metal.
Yeah, and but Mayhem wasn't involved, but Metallica was with some video, which is a funny thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I forgot to ask you, do you have this interview with Chuck on tape still?
I may have that interview on tape. I mean, I personally don't have it, but I think Custodian Killer may have that on tape. He recorded some of my shows, but again, it was recorded like earlier on in the show when like no one was listening to my show. It was like in 1987 or something like that. So I know I have the station ID. He says, "This is Chuck. You're listening to the Powersurge." But I have that, but I may not have the interview itself. And I had asked him about Chris Reifert. That was before Autopsy had put their works out. And he said, Chris had to go to California, and he was going to move to California. So that's what happened to Chris. And later on, he came out with Autopsy. That was a cool deal.
And what other bands did you interview back in the day?
With my show, and being from New York, I was really close to the record companies, Combat, Metal Blade. I interviewed Celtic Frost, I interviewed Venom, I interviewed Coroner, I interviewed Voivod, I interviewed Death Angel. I have the runoff of station IDs where people say, this is so-and-so, and you're listening to the Powersurge.
Yeah, I mean, it would be killer, to upload all these interviews on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll do it one of these days.
Because that's literally history, because these interviews were, conducted when, metal was in its golden age, I guess.
Yeah, right. The greatest thing, I had met Keith Dean from Holy Terror, and that guy was such a trip. He could mimic exactly these voices, and he would go on to rip 10, 15 different types of voices, one after another. I appreciate Keith Dean from Holy Terror. You meet different metal people in the world, and they're all very special. They have a different outlook on life. And they're not put in the box. They're free. They have open minds. They're thinking. They're not telling you what to do. They're just living their lives. I really appreciate all the metal people that I met in the past.
Yeah, and what bands did you see back in the 80s?
The first concert I went to, actually, because my parents were pretty strict with me, I had gotten the okay to go see Iron Maiden. It was the Iron Maiden Power Slave tour, and they played at Radio City Music Hall, and Queensryche had opened up for them. But I was so blown away by Queensryche and the drummer, Scott Rockenfeld. I was like, wow. So that was one of the first bands that I saw live, Maiden. Then I know I saw Judas Priest. After that, I saw some Ozzy shows as well. Mostly, again, big venues, because I think you had to be 18 or over to go to the smaller venues. And then when I got to 18, and I said, I saw Death, I saw Possessed, I saw Dark Angel, I saw Coroner playing that music because the three-piece was just totally amazing. The Crumbsuckers were really great to watch. Ludacris, always a fun band to watch. Lots of bands I saw. And then I went to Europe. The festivals were always great. I think Europe is always a wonderful place to visit and to just go see those shows. It's great. You people are speaking different languages and stuff like that, but you're all under the same banner of metal, which is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And how crazy was this New York scene back in the day?
I mean, crazy was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, the laws were not as strict as they are now, like drinking and driving and alcohol, and people were drinking in the street and stuff like that. But now they clamp down on a lot of that. But one thing I know is the shows were definitely more crazy, because nowadays you go to shows, people just standing with telephones, but back in the day there were people flying off the stage, and it was mosh pits and pits here nowadays too. I mean, the people trying out to hurt each other and stuff like that. That wasn't what it was like back then. I had the opportunity to go see Megadeth when they came out with Peace Sells. That was a show and a half. Back then, nobody really knew quite what Megadeth was. Killing Is My Business came out years before that, and they were like, is it punk? Is it hardcore? They didn't know what it was. Is it metal? Because, we knew Metallica was metal, but Megadeth was kind of like a mixture of stuff. So when we went to the Megadeth concert, a lot of skinheads were there, a lot of punks were there, a lot of metalheads were there, but they were all just jamming out and diving off the stage and stuff like that. And it was just total chaos. It was wonderful. But then as time went on, you could see they started clamping down. No stage diving, because I guess a lot of people got hurt, broken bones, including myself. They sued the places, or they sued the bands and stuff like that. So they said this can't be happening like this all the time. People getting hurt and stuff like that. So they put a barrier and stuff like that, and they limited alcohol and they slowed it down. So it was not as crazy as it was at the beginning.
And what were like the best venues in New York?
Again, it's all, what you think is the best venue is. I mean, what your favorite bands are and stuff. One of the venues I saw, which was weird, they had to put Destruction together with the Cro-Mags, and that was a really crazy show because Destruction opened for the Cro-Mags. As a metalhead, I was like, what? How can Destruction open for the Cro-Mags? But that's how they arranged the show. Destruction started playing. These kids are really happy to see Destruction because Destruction's not a band that could come overseas all the time, as you can see. The metal kids would have a good time, but these skinheads were punching these kids in the back of the head and stuff. What happened was Schmier saw this. Destruction stopped playing. And he was like, hey, you fucking skinheads, you leave the metal kids alone. We don't play. Cro-Mags don't play. And then they picked up and they walked off the stage. So, and the lights went on, and 15 minutes passed. Somebody made arrangements, some kind of agreement, whatever they did. And Destruction came back on, and it was really good. He says, you metalheads unite. Don't let this happen to you. It was interesting how they paired bands up like that sometimes. They weren't really mixable bands.
Yeah, and how big was this backlash between, skinheads and metalheads and, all kinds of, subcultures?
Overall, I think, people can get together and still enjoy the music together and see the same. I think that one scene that I had with Destruction Cro-Mags was kind of unique. But it happened, but again, I don't think that covers how it is always with metal and hardcore being together or those kind of bands together. But if you look at Graveyard, we're in a way talking about a lot of hardcore things about difficulties of life and stuff like that as opposed to fantasy. So incorporate that all kind of styles in our music. And that's the way it should be, I think. You can't really put one kind of music into a certain box and say this is this kind of music this way and you got to be like this to be in this, to listen to this music. Everybody should listen to every kind of music and enjoy everything that they want to hear.
Yeah, and do you have any last words for this interview?
No, man. I'm just so happy to meet guys like you from Serbia, of all countries of the world, that understand metal and look at it a certain way and say, okay, this is interesting stuff. I mean, when I gave you Graveyard, I didn't expect anything, but you came back to me and then you told me where we put things out for people to understand. You understood it exactly as we meant it. And I was like, wow, so this kid knows what we're talking about here. And just to have that connection from so far away is just a beautiful thing. So what you do at Agoraphobic News and what you do for the metal kids and the listeners in Serbia and Eastern Europe is a great thing, man. Just keep on doing it. Don't stop it. And if you do stop it, pass it on at least and let that keep that flame going, because it's an important thing to do. Because music has been so cut down these days, and there's quality music out there still, but a lot of it is there's no redeeming quality to it. We want metal to stay as original and as different and as hard as possible. So, and like I said, your magazine helps us as musicians continue that and want to continue that. So we appreciate all that you guys do.
Yeah, awesome, man. Definitely, man. So thank you for your time and have a nice day, man.
All right, man. All metal kids, stay true and stay metal. Hell.
Hey people, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Agoraphobic News. Please like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel to help us grow. You can also support us on Patreon by becoming one of our patrons. And big shout out to our patron Season of Mist for supporting our work. So stay tuned for another interview and keep it metal.